Great.
All right.
There we
So everyone, this is Alf. Is it Fedak?
It's actually Fedak. That's how I pronounce it.
Fedak.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a Eastern European name. My mother's family, my mother's parents came from Poland, from the area around Warsaw. My father's family came from an area which was at the time known as Galicia. And Galicia was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. It's that section of Central Europe that now straddles Poland and Ukraine. And my mother's family were, they spoke Polish, but they were Roman Catholic. My father's family spoke Russian and were Orthodox. And interestingly, I not too long ago I did this 23andMe thing to discover my ancestry, and I have cousins in Poland and also in Ukraine and Russia. So this whole what's going on over there has become all of a sudden very personal, and really kind of troubling in at so many levels. But it's an interesting. Anyway, the pronunciation. My preferred pronunciation, what I grew up with, was Fedak.
Fedak.
Yeah, it's like feedback without the B.
Right. Right. Interesting. Well, this is part of the choirs at the church, and so we've been talking on email, but we're in Prescott, Arizona, so like right smack dab in the middle of the state. And we have I think we have 800 members at the church. Wow. We don't have that many that attend obviously every week, but it's a pretty good sized church for the area, and we have a lot of people involved in the music program, and we're still a little bit light with all the COVID stuff.
Sure.
But we've been working on the Requiem since, I don't even remember. It was like the first week of February.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I was told the middle of January that I was supposed to do a Requiem for Palm Sunday weekend, and little last minute getting all that going. But yes, we started that in February, and it's been a really interesting experience because we're a pretty casual church. This is, Methodist. We're not high Methodist church. And so a lot of the people, let's do this. If you are comfortable singing in Latin, raise your hand. Okay, yeah. So a lot of people in the choir are not comfortable with Latin. So that's been a little bit of a hurdle we've had to get over, is learning the Latin. And then especially some of the harmonies and stuff that you have, particularly in The Lord is My Shepherd, whichever.
Oh yeah.
With the triplets and the clashing harmonies and the chromaticism and the strings and stuff, which I love it. But when you're not used to singing that kind of music, it ends up being a little more difficult. But
a lot more.
Or a lot more, yeah. So we've been just working on it, and the way that we rehearse is we have two choirs at the church. One that sings, we have a Saturday night service, and then we have two Sunday morning services. And so both the choirs, we combine them, and the first choir is called the Celebration Choir, meets first from 6 to 7, and then Chancel Choir that sings on Saturday meets from 7:15 to 8:30 normally. So when we do something like this, we do our cantata for Christmas, we meet in the middle, so we only get like an hour a week to work on it. And by the time we perform this, we'll have about, I think, a little bit less than 12 hours of rehearsal time on it. But I made rehearsal tracks for everyone to help out with that. But I think everybody's been enjoying it. I know I have. It's interesting going through the music And every time I feel like I do some score study, I pick up on something else. And I feel like, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, that you've pulled from several different places for inspiration, maybe, with the sound you're going for, or even the harmonies and stuff. Do you have anything to say about that? Like what you've
Yeah, if you can, well, first of all, you will, if you're acquainted with either Catholic liturgy or with some of the historical requiems, you will notice the plain songs in the Kyrie and in the Agnus Dei. It's not, I don't believe it's sung in the Agnus Dei, but in the orchestration, there's the same tune you'll hear in the Duraflé Requiem.
Yep.
And there's more than a little bit of rudder in this, and some foray too. I mean, I if you're going to steal, you might as well steal from the best.
Yeah, right.
But when I set about to compose anything, I honestly owe a great debt of gratitude to all the people whose music I've absorbed over the years. You are basically what you hear and what you sing, just like you are what you eat. That inside of my head is all this stuff that's that I've absorbed since childhood, and it's almost like a library that if I can tune into it, it's at my disposal. The funny thing is, there are times, and there were certainly times when I was working on this piece that I didn't really feel that it was me doing it. It was almost as though there was a power working through me, that I looking back, say for instance at Psalm 23, at that time when I wrote this, I didn't have the technical equipment to write something like that in my my musical toolkit, and yet there it is, and I could feel myself. It really is a devotional, almost a prayerful experience to write sacred music. And for me, especially in this work, I sense that at a very deep level. There's a reason why composers, most of them who write requiems, only write one. Because it forces you to come to terms with really the mysteries of life and death, and how you cope with them, how you approach them, what they mean to you, and what your response to them is. I guess Cherubini wrote two, one in C minor and D minor, but he's the only one I know of. All other composers who have written requiems have only done one, because once they've dealt with those issues, those spiritual issues, they're done. And I very much feel the same way about all of this. It's still a piece that's very near and dear to my heart, and I'm so glad you're doing it. I really am. It's just so pleased. It doesn't get done a lot. It gets performed a few times each year, here and there. But it's, for me, it's a ministry. It really is. Yeah, I was expecting my dog to do the same when she heard that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never thought about that. It being such a big experience writing a requiem, and I really never thought about most composers only writing one.
Yeah,
that's not something I had really thought about before or noticed. So that makes a lot of sense, though.
Yeah, this piece was written as a companion piece. I think I mentioned it in the foreword in the choral score. It was commissioned by a fella, a local guy who lost his parents, and his favorite work in all of life was the Saint-Saëns Requiem, and he asked me to write a companion piece to the Saint-Saëns. And I had to admit I'd never even known that Saint-Saëns had written a requiem. And it's a big work, big, large scale work. And the plan was to have the same size orchestra for the requiem, for my requiem. And I did that, which put it out of most people's reach. But I assume you're doing the chamber version, or
yes,
Yeah.
we're doing the chamber version. We don't have enough space or the number of people to have the full orchestration.
Yeah.
But
it was an education for me, even just to experience the Saint-Saëns. I mean, it's really a full-blown romantic requiem. The terrors of hell, the Last Judgment, sobbing choruses. If you get a chance to listen to a recording of it, it's really powerful, and the organ has a significant role in that as well. So it's worth exploring. But yeah, that in itself made it a challenge, because now I had to put my one requiem alongside of the Saint-Saëns requiem, and inevitably going to be some comparison, on the part of the audience and the performers. But his was certainly a concert work, and mine, I really came at it from the point of view of it possibly being part of a worship service, a memorial service, or a funeral, or whatever. So it's more liturgical, I think, than concert.
I get that. I think it's pretty what's what I'm looking for. Well, whenever I've been doing work, doing score study and stuff on it, it just feels very introspective in a lot of parts. I get where it would be better suited for worship service, or like what you're saying, memorial services and stuff like that. And not just a big concert piece.
Right. Yeah, it was really introspective is a good description of it. It becomes a very personal expression of the composer. I wrote it in memory of Cliff's parents, but as I was going through the process, I realized that I was writing it because I lost both my parents and my father, in fact, not too long before. And so I was still dealing with that, and I realized that this is a universal experience that we all have to go through, and my response to it is that I find great comfort in beauty, and my goal was to create as beautiful a piece of music as I possibly could within the structure of the requiem. The liturgical requiem, and so it was designed as a balm, as a sort of a source of comfort, and comfort meaning in both its meanings. Comfort meaning empathy, sympathy, peace, and all that. But the word comfort, literally, from the Latin, means to strengthen with. And so when you're giving someone comfort, you're not only making them feel better. The idea is you're making them stronger as well. You're encouraging them. And for me, the creation of beauty and the experience of beauty is really what it's all about. That's for me where I find peace, and where I find solace, where I find comfort.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah. It's just completely off subject here, but this was written back in 2007, and the soprano soloist at that premiere performance was a woman by the name of Jean Marie Callahan Kern. She was married then. She's not any longer. But she happened to be a college classmate of mine at Hope College back in the 1970s. And when we moved to Albany, we discovered that Gene was already living in this area. We had lost touch over the years. We had been good friends in school, but she got married and moved off. She lived in Chicago and was a diva with the Chicago Lyric Opera. And she traveled all around Europe with the opera company. Was there one of their leading sopranos. And when we got to Albany and discovered that we were practically neighbors, we reconnected. And I wrote the Sanctus, or the Pie Jesu, for her specifically. Her voice was the one I had in my head, and it was the right choice.
She sounds great on the recording.
Yeah, and when I first sat back and listened to the performance, actually I played the organ, but I can't remember. I guess I was playing for this. But anyway, the first time I heard her sing it, for me, that was the turning point in the line of the Requiem, the story of the Requiem. One could be sort of, accepting of everything that had come to that point and go, yeah, that's nice, that's lovely. And then she sang, and it was like anything that happened after that, it didn't matter, because this was just so beautiful. And that's kind of the fulcrum on which the whole Requiem turned, as far as my experience of it at that moment. So I have that feeling. I'm getting shivers even just thinking about it now. It was a powerful experience, and then to realize that, gosh, I wrote that. How did that happen? But so we're still friends with Jean, and in fact she is now directing the two area choruses, the Battenkill Chorale up farther north, upstate New York, and also the Bennington County Choral Society in Vermont. And in about 3 weeks, they're going to be doing another major work of mine, a choral cycle called Last Verse. And what that is a cycle of 8 tombstone epitaphs that I've set to music. It seems kind of like everything I write is about life and death, but some of them are really poignant. Some of them are tragic, these tombstones, and some are just hilarious. So it's a real roller coaster of a piece, and it's for 4-part choir and soloists and piano accompaniment. If you ever want to listen to that, the Harvard Choral Fellows have recorded it and put a video on YouTube. It's called Last Verse. They do a nice job with it. Excuse me.
Yeah, check that out.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I had a couple of questions for you. Just
okay.
Some kind of about the Requiem, some just kind of about you and music. So one of the things I was wondering is, like, when did you start to compose? Like when, or and even just kind of be involved in music. What was that kind of journey like, getting to where you are?
I feel that I'm so fortunate to be able to have a life totally devoted to music. I started playing piano really young. I started taking lessons when I was 5, I think, maybe 6. So I think it was 5. And I was okay as a pianist. I found it easy, and didn't practice as a result. I was offered I received a scholarship to attend a local, this was back in New Jersey, to attend a private prep school. I grew up in the city, and I was clearly a charity case for this exclusive country day school. And so I went. I had a miserable time. I went in seventh grade, which was called Form 1 in the English system. And I had a very difficult time there, except that they had a chapel. And in the chapel was a pipe organ that the students had just enlarged with the help of a faculty member the summer before I arrived. And the first day of school in seventh grade, Form 1, we had an opening convocation in the chapel, and the organ began to play. And then we had a hymn. Now, understand, I grew up in pre-Vatican II Catholicism, where nobody sang. And in fact, it was Latin. And then because it was an ethnic church, a Polish church, when Vatican II came along and the mass went into the vernacular, it went from Latin to Polish. So I was no better off. But here I am in this brand new school, in this lovely chapel, and the organ is playing, and then the singing begins. And I still remember it was the first hymns we sang were the Canticle of the Sun, the let all things there creator bless, all creatures of our God and King.
Yeah.
And then at the end, I think we sang Mighty Fortress. I had never heard anything like this before. I was just
not very
blown
Catholic.
away. Yeah, no, not at all. And all male voices, 550 men and boys singing. And I just was, I was stunned. About a year and a half later, my mother asked me, so do you like Pingree? And I said, nah. She said, would you like to take organ lessons? And I said, you know. And she said, well, I'll inquire. And it turned out that they did have a visiting organ teacher come to the school to teach, and once a week to teach interested students. And I, yeah, okay, whatever. Teenager, right? This woman walked in, and Prudence Curtis was her name. She was tall, statuesque, beautiful, 27 years old. I was 14, young, impressionable, and I started to practice. I stayed after school for 2 hours every night. We went to school from at 8:30 in the morning until 5 at night. I was there until 7 every night practicing. And she was very, very helpful, and said, at one point, if you really wanted to do this for a living, you have what it takes. You could do this. And so I went, yeah. Whatever you say, I will do. Well, it turned out that she was right. I mean, it was what I was meant to do. And I went to Hope College, again, kind of a strange choice for a Catholic, but I was lucky enough that I was a National Merit Scholar. And so when that happens, colleges all over the country start sending you information, like come to our place, so I got all these little business reply cards where I had to indicate my intended major, and I would write church music in parentheses, organ, and send it back to the college. 95% of the schools I never heard from again. But Hope College, which is in Michigan and affiliated with the Reformed Church in America, which I'd never even heard of, they were very interested in me and gave me a very generous scholarship. And I went out there and I majored in organ and music history and met my wife there. So it was a very good choice. And I've been at it ever since. I've been serving churches both in the Midwest and here in the East, on the East Coast, New Jersey and upstate New York. Synagogues. I've been a synagogue organist since off and on since 1982. And that in itself is an education. And even from a Christian perspective, it's an education. I mean, to listen to and hear the the prayers literally that Jesus spoke in the Aramaic. Some of the liturgy is still in Aramaic, actually, but to hear the words that were spoken, 2,000 years ago in the synagogues that Jesus attended, and some of these gospel stories about Jesus getting up and reading from the scrolls, those blessings are the same ones that were spoken before and after the readings back then. The origins, the superficial origins of the sacrament of communion, the blessing of the bread and the blessing of the wine, are still done every Sabbath, every Shabbat. And one can see how this evolved into the sacrament that Jesus established on Maundy Thursday. He was just doing what the Jews still do now, and it gives one a completely different perspective on the history of the church, one for which I'm really grateful. The repertoire is completely different, obviously, the musical repertoire, but I really enjoy it, and I find a great deal of satisfaction and also spiritual comfort in it. It's the congregations I've worked for, their sense of community is so incredibly strong. They're really, each congregation is a family. Excuse me again. So that's why. And anyway, as far as composition is concerned, my piano teacher started me writing little things when I was a kid, and it really wasn't. And of course, during college, you write exercises for counterpoint and theory and all that. I never actually did take a course in composition. I never studied composition per se. What I did do was, when I was working at a church in New Jersey, I started writing things for my choir when something was needed that we didn't have, for a specific occasion. My first published choral piece was a choral anthem for New Year's Day, and it was an anthem called "Now Greet the Swiftly Changing Year," which the reason I wrote it was that New Year's Day fell on a Sunday, and the choir was scheduled to sing on a Sunday. We had nothing in the church music library that would fit. And also, the problem with New Year's Day being on a Sunday is that New Year's Eve is the night before. And whoever showed up that Sunday morning was not going to be in much of a condition to sing anything demanding. So I wrote a simple little anthem, which was mostly 2 parts. And everybody seemed very pleased with it. And I sent it to a publisher. I sent it to Concordia about a week later, and it was immediately accepted. And that was wonderful. My first published piece. About 6 months later, I got my first royalty check. Now, this was like 1982, 83 maybe, and the check was for almost $800. I thought to myself, this is my new career. This is going to guarantee my retirement. No, it doesn't work that way. What it did was give me give me something to do when I do eventually retire. It'll guarantee me some activity. But it's nothing has ever panned out that well that quickly since. But it was a good experience, and it set me on a path that I really am grateful that I'm on.
Yeah, good.
Wow.
So it's interesting. I always like hearing kind of origin stories from people. It's always fun. So another thing that so our accompanist Janet Moore is teaching piano until 7 o'clock and wasn't able to join. So she sent me a couple of things she wanted me to ask you too, or even just mention. And we were, it's the same thing with me, is I've never seen text from the Apocrypha used in a requiem.
No.
And I thought that was interesting, and so did she. And
Revelation, right?
no, it's from the Book of Wisdom and Tobit.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's I thought that was interesting. And why did you choose to use text from the Apocrypha?
Well, actually the text from Wisdom, the souls of the righteous are in the hands of God, is part of the liturgy in the Episcopal funeral service. And so I was aware of that. I had worked in an Episcopal church for a while back in Michigan. Actually, I should mention as an aside, my first 2 church jobs in New Jersey were in Methodist churches. So I have some connection with Methodism. But in any case, the other one, the Tobit, I knew that I had read, in college, I had read a lot of the Apocrypha, and the story of Tobit was one that I was really taken with. What I did though was I was looking for a passage that would complement the wisdom passage, the Justorum Anime, the souls of the righteous, and it was just by chance that I came upon that in Tobit again. I literally went hunting for a verse or 2 that would bring that to a conclusion. So that was sort of that's not the only. And in fact, the opening words, the Kontakion for the departed, all we go down to the dust, and even at the grave we make our song. That too is used in the Episcopal funeral liturgy. So I drew from various sources, obviously. I just love the idea of being able to sing praises even as you're looking at your own grave. I mean, that there's, like I say in the notes, there's something really existential about this. So heroically defiant, to be able to say hallelujah.
Yeah, I like that. Another thing that our accompanist Janet said was, I'm using the big honkin'.
That was good. Yeah.
My page numbers are different than the ones that she said. I should have looked at this before we started. Well, apparently I don't know where it is. Where? Oh, in the Agnus Dei, where you have you labeled. I don't know where it is, but yeah, basically use a chaconne structure for it.
Yep.
So it's very dance-like, which is kind of interesting. But the use of not even modal mixture, but even just it being modal along with the text, I think is interesting. Lamb of God takes away the sins of the world. So you start out, you're in D major, but you're using a ton of C naturals and F naturals.
Yeah. It's I like, first of all, I tend more toward modal tonalities, modalities, other than major and minor. And I also have a kind of I think it's a congenital predisposition toward the subtonic, toward the flat 7.
Yep,
I mean,
a lot of flat 7.
I think I wasted too much of my youth listening to rock music, because that's in almost everything I write that appears somewhere. It's just kind of like an unintentional signature.
It was funny because during rehearsals, a lot of times in the altos or in the basses, they're like, that note sounds wrong.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, no, it does sound wrong, but it's right.
Yeah,
And because
yeah,
it's not major or minor, and
yeah.
you just gotta have to get that in your ear.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, using that, yeah, just the
Yeah. Well,
little,
I think some of that may have to do too with my earliest church going experience in the Catholic Church, where they were still using Gregorian chant back then, and most of that is modal. It's not it's not a whole lot of anything in the Ionian mode, or it's that's a sound that I kind of absorbed early on. It's like I was saying before. I'm kind of the sum. What my musical language is the sum total of everything I've absorbed to this point, as I think everybody experiences. Just one of the things I don't know if anybody would be interested in this, but I very carefully worked out the key sequence from movement to movement, and you can see what's going on. The first movement, we go down to the dust is in the key of B flat, or actually it's in the key of G minor. I'm sorry, and then it goes to its relative major, B flat, in the introit, Requiem Aeternam, and then
E flat, right?
E flat. So okay, we seem to be going around the circle of fifths, or fourths, and then it gets farther afield in the Lord is my shepherd, particularly. It's a D flat, and then when it gets so chromatic, it just you lose all sense of where you are. But then it settles back into D flat, and then into G flat for the Sanctus. So you can see we're going around the flat side of the circle of fifths. And then, yeah. And anyway, once we get that far, it starts coming back to B major. There's a relationship of what, G flat to B major.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Yeah. And then the A major Pie Jesu, which is kind of like, as I said before, it's kind of like the sun coming out or something. All of a sudden we're in a sharp key for the first time. And then the Agnus Dei in D major, and the valediction in G major, and ending in C major with no sharps or flats. So basically, it although it's not a symmetrical arc, we're basically moving from a simple key, from simple to complex, and more and more involved, to the simplest of all things, C major, at the very end. And that's kind of how I see life. I mean, it's kind of like a metaphor for life and the struggles that we all go through. And that was deliberate, as much as these things can be deliberate, when you're dealing with voice ranges and key, instrumentation and all that. So that was,
I had not noticed that. That's interesting. I like that.
And I'm sorry about the G flat major song too. So that's a wicked thing to play.
Yeah,
on almost any instrument.
yeah.
When it's almost impossible to do it as an organ solo. And for that I apologize, but I don't regret it.
It's fine. So the other thing that Janet said is, I don't know if anybody has their scores with them or not, but at the end on page 43, I guess in the choral score, says uses the same music as the beginning, as well as another place or so in the music, but in measure 92 it uses an A natural. It's a very simple yet effective way to finish the work, sort of like a Picardy third on the final chord found in some musical works. Yeah,
Yep.
so I thought that was interesting. The first time I listened to it, I was like, oh, it's almost exactly the same, but it's almost like it's coming to rest. Like it's
Exactly.
the final. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Little things like that are often the things that turn out to mean the most. Um, and even when one doesn't notice them, one senses the difference. Uh, um, I don't know how many people in the congregation or the audience notice the shift from Dona Eis Requiem to Dona Nobis Requiem, but that one word is the thing on which the meaning of the whole piece rests.
Right.
And that too is that was obviously something I had thought about, and did very intentionally.
Very interesting. I love the opening and the ending, and then I guess it's at the end of the first movement.
Yeah,
3-2 to 3-4 to 3-2 to 3-4. We were talking about it last night, and people were like, "How the heck do you count this thing?" And
you don't. You just count quarter notes.
That's what I was telling him. I was like, "You just got to keep the pulse the same and just feel it.
Right.
Don't worry about counting it."
Right.
But I love adding that 3-4 in. Because when we first did it, people want to add an extra beat.
Yes. Yes.
But it's like this, da 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 yan dun da da. It feels very like not tense, but it's this feeling of like pulling you into the next thing and going around in that sequence. With the harmonies, it's just like you're trying to get to the end of it and you just don't know where it's going to end.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. I find the same when I work with choirs. I find the same problem with the Kyrie. Da dee da 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 dum dee da 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 dum da da. No, they want to go dum da dee.
Yep. Yeah.
But yeah, I think doing that, it keeps it moving along and keeps the direction, I think, better. There are times when the requiem literally does settle, but this is too soon in the work to have that happen. So
yeah,
it's interesting. When I still do all my manuscripts by hand. I do not do any computer engraving, computer typesetting, and that kind of makes me a dinosaur. But I did study mechanical drawing in high school, and to me, it's very important to be able to create by hand with pen or pencil and ruler, an artistic, a beautiful, piece of paper with something that's attractive and clear, and it's just part of the process. And for me, what that means is that I have to. Well, my process is I write a sketch, and the sketch is usually so illegible that no one but I could decipher it. Then I draw. Then I turn that into a draft. And depending on it's something like this where there's instrumentation involved, that's the point at which I add the orchestra parts. And then after I've done the sketch and the draft, then I create my fair copy, the final copy. And what that means is that I have to actually copy each note, at least in the choral parts and the keyboard accompaniments, 3 times. I have to write it 3 times, which means that every note that you see is something that I had to make a decision about at least 3 times.
Yeah.
And that's why it's such an important part of the process for me, because I'm making slight changes every time I touch the piece. And by the time I'm done copying it out 3 times, it's as good as I can make it. And that I have really not, excuse me, I've not felt the need to revise anything I've written to this point. A lot of composers do. They go back and rework stuff. It may just be because now I've already written the piece 3 times. I'm done with it. I don't want to bother again. But it also has something to do with the fact that just going through that process makes me confident that what I've done is the best I can do. So
Right. Huh.
everybody has their own way of working. That's mine.
Yeah. That's interesting.
It's a very time-consuming process. I don't work quickly at all.
How long did it take you to write the Requiem?
Well, we performed it in April of 2007. I remember working on it during the previous summer. It went into rehearsals in January. So I worked on it for about 6 months. Yeah. And I also remember copying orchestral parts in the spring of 2007, trying to get them, and I did that all by hand too. But getting all that stuff out before the concert, about 2 months. So even as we were practicing the we were reading from the choral score, every night I'd be at home copying out orchestral parts, which I guess is not unusual.
Huh.
And I don't do an awful lot of orchestral writing. I've only done a few larger scale pieces like this. Most of the time it's organ and voices, and hymn tunes. I write a lot of hymn tunes, but because I don't work with an orchestra regularly, and I'm not terribly experienced with it, I'm very, very careful with my orchestrations. I take nothing for granted, and I try to make everything as like foolproof as possible. They may not be the most creative orchestrations going, although I'm very pleased with what the result was in this case. But it really takes an awful lot of concentration, a lot of effort for me to work in that genre. I'm much more comfortable at the keyboard and directing choirs and like that.
Yeah. Well, that was all the questions that I have, but do any of the choir members, y'all have any questions for him? Anything about the music?
Do you like the piece? Do you like it?
You just took your video off, Lynn. Nate's just trying to talk.
Oh.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Oh, that changed. I just wondered, last night, Jacob, you said something about one part that sounded like a video game. Was that just accidental, or was that
That's
did
right.
the video game copy you?
So it's I forgot about that. The first time I listened to the recording, what page is on? It's right after. Oh, it's right. Oh yeah. So in the first movement, right after the first phrase, the tenors and basses sing that ya da 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 da, or whatever the yeah. Bum 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 bum. That thing is the theme from a video game called Halo.
Oh, well, they stole that from me. Remember, this was written in 2007.
Yeah, I thought it was funny because there's just these little things that stick out.
Oh yeah.
Everywhere. I'm like, that is from. It's a little bit different. It's like you almost like you took a theme for different things and fit it into the sound and the style of the Requiem, which that's funny. Interesting.
The fact that that's lodged in your brain just illustrates what I was saying earlier about we are the sum total of everything we experience.
Yeah. That's interesting.
That's so true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I was a first 6 years of my life I spent in a Polish Catholic church in New Jersey. So
Where?
naturally, St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Little Ferry.
Okay, yeah.
No, it's in Hackensack. It's
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Hackensack. That's where I was christened at and
Uh-huh.
made my first Holy Communion, and then we moved to Arizona. But now I realize why I feel. I mean, I just think growing up Catholic, I feel comfortable with the Latin, and then the sound of it is
Yeah.
not unfamiliar to me growing up Catholic.
Right. I grew up in a Polish parish in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And just for the record, Elizabeth is a great place to be from.
Yeah, it's not a good place to go now, but it was a great place to be from.
Yeah, exactly. And it was St. Adalbert's. And when I got up here to Albany, I was already up here for 15 years or so and working part-time in my church. I wasn't made for 10 years. My wife and I did not have a full-time job between us up here. So I was working for I would work for an organ builder, and my wife was working as a bookkeeper for the symphony and then for a lawyer. And we were piecing together a life, as musicians do. And one of the local parishes here, Catholic parishes, was looking for a Saturday organist, St. Casimir's. And I grew up in a church just like this, about 5 times the size, but this was a Polish parish. And they had a little pipe organ in the balcony, a little Moeller pipe organ of about 9 ranks. And I thought, I could do this. I could do this in my sleep. And they hired me because I knew all the Polish hymns. I literally had to sing from the console. And so I sang Serdeczna Matko, and I sang all the Polish Kolędy, Boże Pozdrowiona, and all the Polish Kolędy. Now, the interesting thing about that church was this. This was the mid-90s, or early to mid-90s. And this was shortly after the whole solidarity thing was going on in Poland, and the country was opening up. The parish was already 100 years old, and most of the people who were there until then were descendants of the people who had come over early in the 20th century and who had built the church. But there was also this influx of new immigrants from Poland. And the songs, the oral traditions diverged over the 100 years that the early immigrants came in the early 20th century, and the new people came. And I had 2 choirs who sang their songs differently. I could not even have them in the same balcony together because they would argue over who was right. And to have, 20 Polish ladies arguing about who's right. It was really the most wonderful experience, but I had to tread so carefully. But when you're a church musician, you learn to be diplomatic. It comes with the territory, and really we had a really wonderful time. I played all the Saturday masses, and funerals, and they had a Sunday organist who couldn't do the rest of the stuff. So they hired me for Saturday masses and funerals, and the Christmas Eve Pasterka, the vigil mass, and the Easter vigil, and I actually sang the Exultet, and it was fun. It was really fun. Unfortunately, the diocese closed the church because it's happening all over. The churches are closing, and then I was out of a job, so that was too bad. But we had a good time when we were at it.
My grandmother's father's name was Casimir.
My grandfather's name also Kazimierz Włodarski. And he married Constance Raczkowska. My father's parents were John
Oh.
Fedak, and Mary Corner.
Hmm.
This whole 23andMe thing has been a real
Yeah, I bet.
revelation. So
Yeah.
it's been good.
Does anybody else have any questions?
I just have a
Comments?
question. How much music was descended upon you? My dad was musical, but he didn't sing very much, but his father was musical and sang. So I just wondered, and my husband is musical, was there that in your background?
Sadly, no. I was the first person to go into music in my family. My mother, both my parents, my mother and father, neither one of them finished high school. Neither one of them had any musical training whatsoever. My mother dropped out in 11th grade to go work to help support her family. My father dropped out in 8th grade and went to work to help support his family. They were very poor. But my younger sister, taking after I started taking lessons, she began taking piano lessons, and now she's a piano teacher down in New Jersey. My two sons both went into music. I have a 44-year-old son who is a really gifted composer, guitarist, trumpeter, drummer, and he's getting his master's in audio engineering at NYU, and he and his Australian wife have our first grandchild who just turned he just turned 2.5, grandson. And this is interesting. Peter's last name is Fedak. Fedak. He married an Australian woman in Australia. We attended the wedding, spent a month in Australia, as one does if you make that kind of a trip. They live in New York City, but her name is Kisha Bari. She's Australian, but of Italian and Fijian descent. So her name is Bari. Peter's name is Fedak. When it came time to choose a name for our grandson, they took the two names and meshed them. And Fedak plus Bari became Fedari. So our grandson's name is Elio Apollo Fedari, which is, I think, a great name for an opera singer.
It's a performer name for sure.
Absolutely. So anyway, my other son, Benjamin, went to Hope College, as did his parents, his grandparents, his great-grand. He was a 5th generation Hope College student, music major, percussionist. Excuse me. He's played with the Schenectady Symphony. He plays with about 3 or 4 rock bands, and he makes his living selling and servicing industrial air compressors, which I understand completely. And he's very happy, and all is well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. Anybody else? No. All right. Well, say that again.
Did you wait for Janet? Is she going to rush in at 7?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you all had your dinner yet?
We have.
I was eating while you were talking.
Good. Well, people think this is ice water.
Yeah.
Actually, it is.
As long as it's not Russian vodka.
No, I would never do that. If I were going to buy vodka, I would buy Sobieski, which is Polish vodka.
There you go.
It would make me feel like I was doing the right thing.
That's right.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you.
I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for setting this up. This has been a delightful time. And I thank you again for performing my work. I've let both of my friends' families know. I have friends in both Tucson and in Phoenix. And the people in Tucson have actually sung this work. They were former members of our choir. My guess is, though, because of the schedule and the 4-hour drive, they're probably not going to make it.
Yeah.
But my friends from Phoenix, there's a very good possibility that they may show up. And in which case,
Good.
I'll make sure that they look you up, Jacob.
Yeah,
And,
tell them to come find me.
I will.
Be easy to figure out who I am.
My guess is they'll probably come to the evening event because let's say Peter sings in the Episcopal choir at the Episcopal Cathedral there, and it is Palm Sunday after all.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, for sure.
Jacob, aren't we having it taped? Or is it
Yeah,
gonna
it'll
be
be,
live?
yeah, we're live streaming it. Yes.
Yeah.
oh, wonderful! That means I can actually hear it then.
Yeah, you can,
Ah.
yeah, hear it and see it.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that so much. I really, you have no idea how much I appreciate all this.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll make sure to send you the link for the live stream so you can check it out.
Cool.
So yeah, well, again, thank you very much. It's always fun to meet and talk with the composer or something. It changes the way you think about, the music you're singing, and gives you different perspectives. So yeah, so thanks a lot for talking.
For better or worse.
Yeah, right. That's right.
All right. Well, thank you. This has been really fun. And
Yeah.
if I don't talk with you again, have a wonderful Easter.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
You too.
You too.
You too.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.